In business tonight, hopes for a thaw in relations between the US and China, injecting plenty of confidence into financial markets today. Chinese shares, along with the yuan, in fact, emerging markets in general, getting a lift after that phone call between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping. Investors, they bet the conversation might, at the very least, indicate a willingness to nudge bilateral ties onto a more serious path. The relationship between the two have been at a standstill since President Joe Biden took office. The previous Trump administration negotiated a so-called Phase 1 trade deal early last year in an attempt to resolve issues like a yawning U.S. trade deficit with China. But this pact expires at the end of this year, and there are still high tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods both ways. Now, this is hurting trade and businesses. Powerful business groups have lobbied for a resumption of trade talks and for the levies to be lifted. They say the tariffs fuel inflation and stifle business and ultimately hurt the global economy. Well, for more, we're joined by Bo Zhuang, who's a senior analyst at Loomis Sayles. Well, how are you reading the latest phone call? Does it signal a potential thaw in the trade war?
First of all, I think there are three key takeaways we can take from those phone calls between Xi Jinping and Biden. Number one, is a good thing they are talking, and I think that's a good sign. Second thing is they both acknowledge that both countries acknowledge that that's not in their interest to veer into a conflict for both countries. So again, that's a good thing. However, in the Chinese statement, China put out they had a candid and in-depth discussion. So in the Chinese diplomatic language context, candid discussion, which means that they have a lot of disagreements while they actually during their 90 minutes talk. So I read into it, this is a good starting point, nothing more than that. So I wouldn't regard it as this will be a kind of strong sign of easing between these two countries. But however, it might open up for new channels for communication between these two countries, which is a very good sign.
Yeah, so based on what you're saying, are businesses and markets then reacting too optimistically? I mean, today markets all closed up in the green.
Yes, I think that based on market movement, it seems to be kind of an overreaction. But the thing is that based from the business perspective, nothing is worse than a frozen conflict. So they are talking, which means that there's a potentially improvement. Because since the Chinese and China and US meeting in Anchorage, things have deteriorated quite a lot. So I think that this Biden and Xi Jinping's call is like a starting point, and but overall market movement maybe is an overreaction in my view.
I do have to ask you though, what is this regarded as for investors? Is it a risk-on bet? I mean, today we also saw the Indonesian rupiah and the Chinese yuan rally.
For the moment, I think that it is the kind of a good sign. But in my view, that this kind of development wouldn't last for too long. So market just looking for signs to be optimistic. Maybe in the future, that more positive developments might take place into like green technology and then some of those climate change perspective, because that's the only area that both press release from both countries, China and US, they have agreed upon. And then I think European EU is also in agreement with China and US as well. So I think that anything to do with climate change or green technology might be the one that will benefit more than the other areas.
Well, we also know that the White House is frustrated that China is not taking its approaches seriously, nor is the U.S. giving an inch on sanctions against Beijing. In your opinion, who is going to blink first?
I think that neither party is going to blink first, because now they are talking to each other. But the thing is that there are very few common grounds they can agree upon. So there's nothing to blink over here. So in my view, that finding this little common ground will be the first step. And I don't think that China will blink, because China keep on emphasizing that they want to have an equal weight with US. All this, the US shouldn't look down on China, and which I think the Chinese is not going to get it.
Well, thank you for that, Bo Zhuang from Loomis Sayles.